This is Total Telecom TV at Communication in Singapore. I'm talking today with Nathan Bell of Telstra Global, who's just given a presentation about secure cloud. Nathan, what were the main points you were giving the audience today?
Well, thanks for having me, Brian. Look, the main points today has really been about understanding, I guess, the balance between perception and reality of what security means in a cloud environment. Historically, we've had to look at the CIO being responsible for security, and that worked just fine. But now in these cloud environments, there's a lot more different dynamics when it comes to understanding security. So when you are looking at the requirements in your cloud environment, how easy is it going to be accessible? Do you want to add multiple layers of authentication? How much encryption are you going to be doing on the actual platform? And how easy will that therefore be for staff to be able to get access to it? Things that we didn't have to consider before. And you combine this with the fact that in a market like Asia Pacific, which is so diverse, and although it is often compared to Europe, we have 50 very unique countries here that have their own regulatory and government policies on how data needs to be protected and on how cloud platforms actually need to behave. And so ultimately we've got these different dynamics now that are coming together to actually drive the decision around security. So it's no longer about the CIO deciding, yes, I'm compliant, I've got a firewall in place. It's actually now about the business owners, it's about the finance owners deciding what's the right level of security we need that we can justify for our business, but equally make sure that it's still accessible and viable for our business to use.
And what sort of, what led you to this viewpoint? What kind of, how did you research all this?
Well, it hasn't so much been a research, but actually testing this on ourselves. So we've actually gone through an amazing learning for ourselves in terms of adopting new cloud services for our own use. So how we engage with our customers, how we actually enable collaboration with our staff, and how do we store our data. And I guess one of the big learnings that we had for ourselves is although we traditionally just relied on the CIO to make sure that we were compliant, so that we had the right tick in the box from a regulatory perspective, we realized that it was actually having an impact on our own end users as well. So we had to start taking that aspect into account. And then of course with the CFO asking, so hang on a second, we're moving all this into the cloud, but now I've got increased costs because of the security requirements that actually have to be built around it. So that learning has really led us to believe this collaborative approach across the business is so crucial to make sure we understand the sort of push and pull factors of what security is required, but make sure that it's not completely blocking the actual ability that cloud is bringing in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, cloud is obviously a very important part of your growth anyway, isn't it?
Absolutely, absolutely. Look, as Telstra Global, we've really looked at the cloud not just being a service, but also being a platform. And so a lot of our capabilities are riding on this cloud architecture as well. And we see that as being really, really important. Because if you're looking at the IT environment and you've got business elasticity there, if you're stuck with static communication platforms, you're not going to get the true benefit that cloud can provide. So one of the great things that we've been looking at is how do we virtualize these communication platforms, whether it's around conferencing, whether it's around contact centers, video or telephony. And in doing so, we actually think that's going to be much more holistically valuable to a customer to know that they don't have to worry about any individual element that's in the cloud. They can look at it more holistically. So you start looking at the security holistically, you start looking at the cost impact holistically, and ultimately the business can start deciding what they want to do first, as opposed to wondering what the implications are of operating in the cloud.
Yeah, and I think another key word that you're looking for people to take on board is consistency.
Absolutely, absolutely. It can't just be Telstra Global with one approach and a number of other providers with other approaches. So one of the things that we've been working on with a number of other businesses and service providers, vendors, etc., is in the Asia Cloud Computing Association. And what that's all about is trying to create a greater consistency in approach. Doesn't mean that everyone's offer is going to be the same, it just means that the way that we approach the market. So being able to engage with regulatory bodies to go and say, look, this is what's going to enable us to bring cloud services quick into the marketplace, or to be able to educate businesses on how security can have an impact and the different types of platforms that are available to them to be able to adopt security. So it's these elements that are allowing us to have these dialogues to start looking at creating a more common approach to what cloud could potentially be, and as such giving everyone a much larger opportunity to be able to engage with their customers, knowing that it's not going to be a lost in translation experience, but very much a consistent engagement and therefore focus on the customer's needs.
Okay, well thanks for sharing that with us, and it's going to be an interesting few months ahead, I think, from Telstra on this area.
Absolutely, thank you very much, Brian.